There are some names that just echo through history, right? Names that spark poetry, spirituality, even rebellion. Well, for over 1,000 years, one of those names has been Mansur al-Hallaj. He's this profound figure that, honestly, we're still trying to wrap our heads around.
Okay, so to really get who this guy was, we kind of have to start at the end, and it's a brutal end. I mean, we're talking about the year 922. He was publicly tortured, crucified, and then his body was burned, his ashes scattered. So that's the big question for us today, right? Who was al-Hallaj? How does one person inspire that level of love from some and a hatred so intense it leads to, well, that?
And this is where you see the central mystery, the paradox of al-Hallaj. On one side, you've got his enemies, the government, the religious authorities, who saw him as a dangerous sorcerer, a political rebel trying to tear down the whole system, and, a heretic of the highest order. But then, on the other side, his followers saw a totally different person. To them, he was this beloved saint, a martyr of love, a soul who had completely merged with the divine. I mean, these are two completely opposite views of the same man. How is that even possible?
So to figure this out, we have to zoom out a bit. We've got to understand the world that made him and ultimately the world that broke him. See, al-Hallaj didn't just appear out of nowhere. He was a product of his time, a time that was brilliant for sure, but also incredibly chaotic and troubled. All right, so let's set the scene. When al-Hallaj is born, around 858, the massive Abbasid Caliphate, the heart of the Islamic world, is starting to crumble. You've got these caliphs who are supposed to be in charge, but really they're just puppets for their generals. It's a mess of political decay and corruption. And whenever that happens, what do people do? They start looking for something real, something deeper. So there's this huge spiritual hunger. And into that void steps Sufism, this mystical side of Islam. It becomes this powerful alternative voice. And this is the powder keg of a world that al-Hallaj is born into.
Okay, so we've got the setting. Now let's dive into the man himself, because his own journey is every bit as dramatic as the era he lived in. And believe me, this was not a guy who sat still. His whole life was a journey, a spiritual one, sure, but also a literal one across the map.
I mean, his path was just incredible. Born in Persia, he's intensely spiritual right from the get-go. He memorizes the entire Quran by the time he's 12, but that wasn't enough for him. He was after something more than just what you can read in a book. So he becomes a Sufi, studying with the biggest names of his time in places like Basra and Baghdad. But here's the thing, he doesn't just stay there. He hits the road. He becomes this epic traveler, going all over from Mecca to India to Central Asia, and everywhere he goes, people are drawn to him. He gets this huge following, and not just because he's a mystic, but because he's out there demanding social justice for the people.
And this is the key thing you have to understand about him. His message was like a chemical reaction waiting to happen. He wasn't some quiet monk meditating in a corner. Nope. He took this deeply personal, intimate experience of divine love and fused it with a fiery public call for social and political justice. Think about it. He's calling out the corrupt, the wealthy, the powerful, and that, my friends, made him incredibly dangerous.
So you can probably see where this is going. This blend of spiritual ecstasy and political activism put him on a collision course with the entire empire. And the flashpoint, the thing that would set it all off, came down to just 3 simple words. But oh man, were they world-shattering.
Okay, before we get to those words, we need a quick primer on a core Sufi concept. It's called fana. In Arabic, it literally means annihilation. So what does that mean? It's the ultimate spiritual goal for a mystic. It's the state where your own individual self, your ego, that little voice in your head that says, I, just dissolves. It gets completely annihilated in the presence of God. At that moment, the Sufis believe there's no you anymore. There's just God. Now, for most mystics, if you ever reached a state like that, you would keep it to yourself. It's a deeply personal, sacred secret, right? But al-Hallaj, well, he was built different. He believed that this experience wasn't some private little secret. To him, it was the ultimate truth of all existence. And a truth like that, it needs to be declared. It needs to be shouted from the rooftops for everyone to hear. And so that's exactly what he did. Right there in the bustling markets of Baghdad, he made the declaration that would seal his fate. Ana al-Haqq, I am the truth. Just that one phrase, and it was like a bomb went off. Everyone interpreted it differently. First, you have the religious establishment. To them, this was pure blasphemy. See, al-Haqq, the truth, is one of the 99 sacred names of God. For a human being to claim that for himself, that was the ultimate heresy. Then you have his followers, the other Sufis. They got it. They knew it wasn't al-Hallaj's ego talking. It was God speaking through him in that state of fana. For them, this was proof he was a saint. But the government, the caliphate, they heard something else entirely. They heard treason, sedition. Think about it. If God is the ultimate authority, and this guy is walking around saying, I am that authority, then he's making a direct challenge to the caliph, who's supposed to be God's guy on earth. Big, big trouble.
So, what happened? They arrested him. They put him on trial. And they executed him in that horrific way we talked about. But here's the thing. The caliphate could kill the man, sure, but they couldn't kill the idea. In fact, his death wasn't an ending at all. It was the beginning of his real story, his immortal legacy.
I mean, we're talking over 1,000 years later, and his story hasn't just been remembered, it's been argued about, written about, and used as inspiration by mystics, poets, and even revolutionaries. His execution didn't shut him up. It turned his voice into an echo that has just gotten louder and louder over the centuries. So what exactly is his legacy? Well, first off, in Islamic mysticism, he's basically the ultimate martyr of love. The guy who gave up literally everything for the divine. He directly inspired some of the greatest poets ever. We're talking heavy hitters like Rumi and Hafiz. Entire Sufi orders, some that lasted for centuries, trace their spiritual roots right back to him. You know, his story of love and sacrifice was so powerful that some people even refer to him as the Christ of Islam. And of course, because he wasn't afraid to speak truth to power, his name became this enduring symbol of standing up to injustice.
There's this amazing line from the poet Hafiz that just perfectly captures how legendary his death became. The idea was that his execution wasn't a loss. It was the ultimate proof that he was right all along. They imagined that even his blood spilling on the ground would spell out the words, I am the truth. Just wow. And that brings us right back to where we started, to that central paradox. So who was al-Hallaj really? Was he a heretic who just went too far? Or was he a saint who saw something so real, so true, that he was willing to die for it? That's the question his life leaves hanging in the air. And it's a question that, honestly, is still relevant for anyone today who thinks about speaking their truth to power, even after all this time.